Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I've got a story for you, but not just any story. Have you ever worked your heart out for years, believing that one day your hard work would finally be recognized? Only to watch someone else, someone brand new, swoop in and take the reward that should have been yours? Well, that's exactly what happened to Jessica. She spent 5 years giving everything she had to her company. Late nights, endless meetings, fixing disasters no one else wanted to handle. She thought she was finally going to get her big promotion. But what happened at her own promotion party? It wasn't just shocking, it was humiliating. And when you hear what she did next, I promise, you'll want to stand up and cheer. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about revenge, power, and knowing your worth. Let's dive in. The restaurant that night was buzzing with energy. The sound of laughter mixed with the soft clinking of glasses, the low hum of conversations weaving together like music. Golden fairy lights were strung above us, casting a warm, almost magical glow across the long dining table where my coworkers sat, chatting excitedly, smiles plastered across their faces. The whole place felt alive, celebratory. But for me, the night carried a heavier meaning. It wasn't just a company dinner. It was supposed to be my night. My name is Jessica. I'm 38 years old, and for the past 5 years, I gave everything I had to the company we were celebrating tonight. I wasn't the type to brag, but if I'm honest, I had earned this night. I had worked weekends when everyone else was out enjoying their families. I stayed late to clean up messes that weren't mine. When things went wrong, I was the one who fixed them. When new hires struggled, I was the one who took them under my wing, even though it was never in my job description. I had built this team, brick by brick, sacrificing time, sleep, and sometimes even my own sanity, just to keep everything running smoothly. And it wasn't just me who knew it. My boss, Mr. Collins, had been dropping hints for months. Subtle comments in meetings, casual mentions in the break room. Phrases like, "Jessica, when you're in leadership," or "You've been the backbone of this team for years." He made it clear, at least I thought he did, that I was next in line for the director position. I had imagined this night 100 times. The applause. The smile on Mr. Collins' face when he finally said the words I'd been waiting for. The pride swelling in my chest when everyone turned to congratulate me. It wasn't just a promotion I wanted. It was validation. Proof that everything I had poured into this place hadn't been for nothing. So, I'd put on my best navy blue dress that evening, the one I'd bought especially for this dinner. I'd curled my hair, added a little more makeup than usual, because tonight was supposed to be a turning point, the night I finally got what I'd earned. I sat at the table, surrounded by my coworkers, trying to focus on their conversations, but all I could hear was the thudding of my own heartbeat. Mr. Collins was at the head of the table, laughing along with the team, glass of wine in hand. Every so often, his eyes would flick toward me, and each time, I felt that small spark of hope flare in my chest. This was it. Any minute now. And then it happened. He stood up, raising his wine glass, tapping it gently with a fork. The chatter died down almost immediately, the team turning their attention toward him. My breath caught in my throat. "Everyone," he began, his voice deep and confident, "tonight isn't just about our company's success. It's about celebrating the people who make that success possible." I shifted in my chair, my fingers tightening around the stem of my champagne glass. "For months," he continued, "I've watched someone on this team go above and beyond. Someone who's brought fresh energy, creativity, and leadership into this company." My lips parted slightly. My pulse pounded in my ears. Mr. Collins smiled wider. "It's rare to find someone who makes such an impact in just 3 months. 3 months. I blinked, the words sinking in like ice water poured down my back. He turned toward the other end of the table. "Emily," he said, lifting his glass, "you've exceeded every expectation. And tonight, I'm proud to announce your promotion to director." For a second, everything around me stopped. The applause, the cheers, the clinking glasses. They all sounded distant, muffled, like I was underwater. I stared at him, at Emily, at the people around me smiling and clapping, as if the ground beneath me had suddenly shifted. 3 months. That was how long she'd been with us. 3 months compared to my 5 years. My heart dropped like a stone in my chest. I felt something crack inside me, sharp and undeniable. And right there, under the glow of fairy lights and the sound of celebration, I realized this night was never meant to be mine. The sound of applause roared around me like thunder, but I couldn't hear any of it clearly. It was as if my ears had filled with cotton, the voices and cheers of my coworkers fading into a distant echo. My smile froze on my face, muscles stiff, my fingers gripping the stem of my champagne glass so tightly I thought it might snap. "Emily." He had said Emily. I glanced across the table, and there she was. Emily, the fresh-faced new hire who had barely figured out how the coffee machine worked 3 months ago. She was blushing, her hands covering her mouth in shock, like she hadn't seen this coming. Maybe she hadn't, but I had. Not until tonight, but looking back it all made sense. The extra meetings she was invited to. The friendly little chats with Mr. Collins in the hallway. I'd ignored it, convinced myself it meant nothing because I wanted to believe in something good for once. My heart pounded in my ears as Mr. Collins continued speaking. His voice loud and proud. "Emily has shown outstanding dedication, creativity, and leadership," he said, beaming at her like she was the brightest star in the sky. "In just 3 months, she's made an impact many people take years to achieve." The words hit me like tiny, sharp needles. 3 months. I had given 5 years of my life to this place. And in 3 months, Emily had apparently done more. My stomach twisted as the team clapped and cheered. Some looked genuinely happy, others surprised. A few glanced in my direction, quickly looking away when they caught my eye, their smiles fading just slightly. They knew. Everyone knew who had been expected to get that promotion. But no one said a word. Then, just when I thought the humiliation was over, Mr. Collins turned to me, grinning like a man completely unaware of the storm he'd just created. "And Jessica," he added casually, lifting his glass higher, "of course we appreciate everything you do. Maybe next time you'll take a few notes from Emily. She could teach you a thing or two." The words landed like a slap across my face. My cheeks burned, but I forced a laugh, nodding politely as if his comment hadn't sliced through me like a knife. The table erupted in light laughter. Awkward, uncomfortable, but still laughter. Emily shifted in her seat, her smile faltering. She leaned toward me, voice low. "I didn't mean to." I cut her off with a tight smile. "Congratulations, Emily. You deserve it." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I said it anyway. What else was I supposed to do? Cry? Make a scene? Well, that wasn't me. I was the dependable one, the composed one, the one who stayed late and fixed everything, even her own broken heart. The rest of the night blurred into a haze of forced smiles and hollow conversation. People toasted to Emily's success, the drinks kept flowing, and I played my part, laughing, clapping, celebrating. But inside, something inside me was unraveling. A storm brewing quietly beneath the surface. Every time I caught Mr. Collins' eye, I wondered if he had any idea what he'd done. If he even cared. Probably not. To him I was just another employee. Reliable, replaceable, easy to overlook. But he was wrong. By the time the party ended and the night air hit my face outside the restaurant, one thing was crystal clear. This wasn't just a bad night. This wasn't just about a promotion. This was betrayal. And I wasn't going to let it slide. Smiled. I smiled so hard that my cheeks ached. So wide that it felt like the corners of my mouth might tear. Every laugh, every cheer that echoed around me, I mirrored it perfectly. I clinked glasses, toasted to Emily's success, nodded along to the compliments thrown her way like confetti. On the outside, I looked like the proud teammate, the loyal colleague who could rise above disappointment. But inside I was crumbling. With every sip of champagne, the knot in my stomach tightened. With every "Congratulations, Emily," the sound seemed to drill deeper into my skull. I laughed when they laughed. I nodded when they talked about how quickly she had turned things around in the company. I even hugged her when she shyly accepted everyone's praise, telling her, "You'll be amazing." What else could I do? I couldn't scream in the middle of that restaurant. I couldn't flip the table and demand to know why 5 years of sacrifice had meant nothing. I couldn't ask why Mr. Collins had spent months whispering promises he never intended to keep. So I smiled. I smiled like my heart wasn't breaking. The evening dragged on, every minute heavier than the last. My coworkers laughed louder the more they drank. Mr. Collins made jokes about how Emily's fresh perspective was exactly what the team needed. And all I could think about was how I had been invisible all along. When the party finally wound down, I stood by the door, shaking hands, thanking people for coming, playing the good soldier until the very end. No one noticed how stiff my shoulders were. No one saw how tightly I was gripping my coat. The cold night air hit me like a slap when I finally stepped outside. It was crisp and quiet, a sharp contrast to the noise and heat of the restaurant. I stood there for a moment, staring at the dark sky, feeling the weight of everything I had swallowed down that night pressing against my chest. That's when something inside me snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a thread that had finally worn too thin. Pulled out my phone. My fingers trembled slightly as I unlocked it, but my mind was clear, calmer than it had been in months. I opened my email, my thumbs flying over the screen with a precision honed from years of late-night crisis management. Subject: Resignation letter submission. Dear Mr. Collins, please find my official resignation letter attached. Effective immediately. Best regards, Jessica. That was it. Short, direct. No emotion, no explanation, no second chances. I stared at the email for a second, my finger hovering over the send button. And then, without hesitation, I tapped it. The email disappeared from my outbox, sailing straight into Mr. Collins' inbox like a dagger wrapped in silk. As I slipped my phone back into my purse, I took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel exhausted. I didn't feel defeated. Felt free. He had no idea what was coming next. Monday morning arrived crisp and quiet, the way mornings do when the world hasn't quite caught up to the chaos you left behind. I walked through the revolving glass doors of the office building, the familiar smell of polished floors and burnt coffee lingering in the air. Felt like any other Monday. But everything was different. The receptionist looked up, flashing me her usual bright smile. "Good morning, Jessica." I smiled back, calm, composed. "Morning." My heels echoed softly on the tile as I made my way to the elevator. People passed me in the hallway, nodding in recognition, chatting about their weekends like nothing had happened. They had no idea. They didn't know that, waiting quietly in Mr. Collins' inbox, was the resignation letter I'd sent Friday night. After the party, after the betrayal, after I had made my decision. That email had been sitting there for 2 days like a loaded gun, and he hadn't seen it yet. But he would. Today. I stepped into the elevator, watching my reflection in the mirrored walls. I didn't look broken anymore. I looked steady, in control, powerful. The office floor hummed with the usual Monday energy. Coworkers gathered near the break room, balancing coffee cups and half-hearted smiles. Emily sat at her desk, her posture a little too straight, clearly still adjusting to the weight of her shiny new title. She looked up when I passed by, eyes flickering with something. Guilt, maybe, or confusion, but I didn't stop. I didn't need to. I walked to my desk, placed my bag down gently, and powered on my computer like it was any other day. But inside I was waiting. I knew what was coming. It didn't take long. Mr. Collins' office door slammed open so hard it made the entire floor go quiet. The chatter died instantly, the sound of his shoes pounding against the floor like a drum roll. His face was red, his jaw tight, his eyes locked on me. "Jessica." "My office." "Now." The room froze. People exchanged looks. I could feel the weight of every pair of eyes turning toward me. I stood slowly, smoothing the front of my blouse. My heart wasn't racing. My palms weren't sweating. I was calm. I followed him back to his office, aware of how quiet the room had become behind me. He didn't say another word until the door clicked shut, cutting us off from the watchful eyes outside. When I turned to face him, he was already behind his desk, holding a printed sheet of paper in his hand like it had personally betrayed him. Is this some kind of joke? His voice cracked slightly as he lifted my resignation letter. You're leaving. I sat down across from him, crossing my legs and folding my hands neatly in my lap. Yes, I said simply. Effective immediately. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't quite process the words. But why? We didn't talk about this. You didn't say anything. I tilted my head slightly, meeting his eyes without flinching. We didn't talk about Emily's promotion either. But here we are. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his thinning hair. His composure was slipping fast. Jessica, come on. That wasn't personal. Emily just outperformed expectations. I smiled, a slow, controlled smile. 3 months versus 5 years. Let's call it that. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Listen, you've been an important part of this company. I don't want to lose you. I could see it now, the panic behind his eyes. He wasn't used to people like me walking away. He wasn't used to being the one left behind. But this time he had no choice. And I wasn't done yet. Mr. Collins stared at the printed resignation letter in his hand like it was a foreign language he couldn't quite understand. His eyes flicked over the words again, disbelief twisting his features. The color had drained from his face since I walked into his office, and now he looked less like the smug, confident boss who had stood at that dinner table on Friday night, and more like a man who had just realized the floor beneath him was cracking. He cleared his throat, forcing his voice to sound calm, but I could hear the strain behind it. Jessica, this is ridiculous. You can't just walk away like this. I sat perfectly still, legs crossed, hands folded in my lap, as composed as I had ever been. I can. And I am. He shook his head sharply, like he was trying to shake off a bad dream. You're making an emotional decision. I get it. Friday night things didn't go the way you expected. But this isn't how you handle disappointment. I let out a soft laugh, but there was no humor in it. You think this is about disappointment? He leaned forward, his tone edging into condescension. Jessica, be reasonable. I know you're upset, but you've built a career here. You're throwing it all away over a party. Party. That's what he thought this was about. Single night. I met his eyes, holding his gaze without blinking. This isn't about one night, Mr. Collins. This is about 5 years. 5 years of loyalty, of late nights, of cleaning up every mess this company threw at me. And you know what's funny? This resignation isn't even emotional. It's the most logical thing I've ever done. He frowned, clearly not expecting that answer. Logical. Jessica, you're walking away without a plan. That's not logic. That's pride. I smiled then, slowly, deliberately. Oh, but I do have a plan. And you'll love this part. He sat back slightly, suspicion creeping into his expression. You remember Andrew Bennett? I asked, watching carefully as his features tightened. Course he remembered. Andrew Bennett, the CFO he'd forced out last year after months of tension and power plays. The man he couldn't control, so he'd pushed him out, convinced the company didn't need him. What about him? Mr. Collins asked warily. I leaned forward, my voice calm but cutting. Andrew reached out to me months ago. He told me he was starting his own firm. Said he wanted me to join him, to lead operations as director. His eyes widened slightly, his mouth opening. And you didn't? I said no, I finished for him. I told him I was loyal to this company. That I believed in what we were building here. I paused, letting that sink in. But Friday night changed everything. His face fell. I could almost see the moment he realized exactly what he'd done. I called Andrew after I left the restaurant, I continued. And he made the offer again. This time I said yes. Silence fell over the room like a heavy blanket. Mr. Collins sat frozen, his jaw tight. His fingers curled into a fist on the desk. "You're leaving for him," he said finally, his voice flat. "I start next Monday," I replied smoothly. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head like he still couldn't believe it. "Jessica, come on. We can fix this. You've been here for 5 years. You're part of this place." I stood up then, smoothing the front of my blouse. "No, Mr. Collins. I've been part of this place. But you never once made me feel like I belonged." I turned toward the door but paused, glancing back at him one last time. "You underestimated the wrong person." Then I walked out, leaving him alone with the consequences of his choices. "Before we continue, I want to hear from you. What would you do if you were in Jessica's shoes? Imagine working so hard for years, only to be overlooked and humiliated like that. Would you stay and keep fighting? Or would you walk away like Jessica did? Drop a comment below and let me know how this story makes you feel so far. Are you cheering for Jessica? Are you angry for her? I'm reading every single comment because trust me, the best part of this story is still coming. Alright, let's get back to what happened next, because Jessica wasn't done yet. The silence in Mr. Collins' office stretched long and heavy after I dropped the truth on him. He sat there, shoulders stiff, mouth slightly open, staring at the resignation letter like it might vanish if he just blinked hard enough. But it didn't. Neither did I. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice strained and breathless. "Jessica, listen. We can fix this." I remained still, not reacting. I wanted to see how far he'd go. "You've been here for 5 years," he continued quickly, the words tumbling out like a man scrambling to stop an avalanche. "You're one of our best. I'll talk to HR. We'll fast-track your promotion. Director title. A significant raise. More benefits. Whatever you want. Just don't do this." The desperation in his voice almost made me laugh. Almost. I tilted my head slightly, studying him. This man who had laughed at my expense just 3 nights ago. Who had looked me in the eye and told me to take notes from someone who had barely unpacked her desk. Now here he was, scrambling, panicked, as if he had only just realized what he was about to lose. And yet it was too late. "Mr. Collins," I said softly but firmly, "do you know what the difference is between you and Andrew?" He blinked, thrown off. "What?" "Andrew offered me a promotion months ago," I continued. "He saw my value without me having to threaten to leave." I leaned forward, voice cool and controlled. You only see my worth now because I've already walked away." He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off before he could speak. "This was never about the money. It's not even about the title. It's about something you clearly don't understand." I stood up, smoothing the front of my blouse. "It's about respect." He leaned forward again, grasping at straws. "Jessica, please. You're making a mistake. This company is your home. You've built your career here." I smiled then, slow and deliberate. "If I wasn't valuable to you before, why should I believe I am now?" The question hung in the air between us. Heavy, sharp, undeniable. He had no answer. I turned without waiting for one. As I walked toward the door, I felt something inside me settle. The weight I'd carried for years, the constant pressure of proving myself to people who never really looked, it was lifting piece by piece. At the door, I paused and glanced back at him one last time. He looked smaller now, deflated. Like a man watching the empire he built begin to crack. "I hope you learn from this," I said quietly. "Because not everyone is replaceable." And with that I walked out. No hesitation. No second thoughts. I was done. I didn't head straight for the elevator after walking out of Mr. Collins' office. No, I wasn't done yet. Back at my desk, I moved slowly, deliberately, as if it were any other Monday. But inside I could feel the shift like the calm after a storm. The chatter around the office had died down to an uneasy murmur. People were pretending to work, eyes flickering up every time I moved, curiosity and tension crackling in the air like static. I opened my laptop one last time. With a few quick clicks, I pulled up the email I had sent to Mr. Collins on Friday night, the one that had started all of this. My resignation letter. I added one line at the top. Forwarded to Senior Leadership Team. Subject: Official resignation notice. Effective immediately. Then I hit send. The message sailed out across the office servers like a spark looking for dry timber. It didn't take long. I heard it first, the faint ping of notifications going off around the floor. Desks creaked as heads turned toward me. Whispers began almost immediately, a ripple of shocked voices spreading like wildfire. Did you see this? She really did it. No way. After 5 years. I kept my eyes on my screen, calmly shutting it down for the last time as if I couldn't hear them. The weight of those whispers didn't crush me. They lifted me, because now they were finally paying attention. A shadow appeared beside my desk. I looked up to see Rachel, one of the few people here I actually trusted, hovering awkwardly, her eyes wide. You really did it, she breathed, almost like she couldn't believe it. I gave her a small smile. Yeah, it was time. She shook her head, half in shock, half in admiration. I don't blame you. Honestly, after what happened Friday, I would have done the same. A few other coworkers started drifting past, pretending to refill their coffee or check the copier, but their eyes kept darting toward me. Some nodded, some avoided my gaze entirely, but I could see it written all over their faces, the ones who understood and the ones who wished they had the guts to do the same. And then, as I was packing the last of my things into a small cardboard box, I heard soft footsteps behind me. I turned to see Emily. She stood there awkwardly, clutching a folder to her chest like a shield. Her smile was tentative, unsure. Jessica, she started, her voice almost a whisper. I didn't know. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't know what? She hesitated, fumbling for words. About the promotion. About how it was supposed to be yours. I let out a soft laugh, but there was no bitterness in it anymore. Just clarity. It's fine, Emily, I said, meeting her eyes. Enjoy the promotion. She flinched at that, like the words stung more than she expected. Maybe because they weren't cruel. Maybe because they were true. Before she could say anything else, I turned away, picking up my box. I walked toward the elevator, my steps steady and light. Behind me, the whispers continued, but I didn't look back. Because this wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning. Jessica stepped into the bright, modern office of Bennett & Associates, a place that immediately felt different. The air was charged with ambition, the kind of energy that made her feel like anything was possible. It wasn't just another office building. It was the beginning of a new chapter in her life. The walls, adorned with sleek, contemporary art, seemed to tell stories of success and innovation. The open layout and natural light flooded the space, making her feel like this was a place where ideas could grow and flourish. As she walked through the glass doors, her heart pounded with anticipation. She had come a long way from the painful days of being betrayed and broken. She had earned this new beginning, and she knew it was more than just a job. It was a chance to prove to herself that she was capable, that she deserved a fresh start. The company felt like a place where she could rewrite her story, a place where she could be more than just another employee. Jessica's first meeting was with Andrew, the CEO. He was sharp, confident, and clearly not someone who wasted time on trivialities. From the moment they shook hands, Jessica sensed something different about him. There was no superficial charm, no pretending. He didn't care about her past or her mistakes. He cared about her potential, her ability to deliver. Without wasting any time, Andrew sat her down in his office. The walls were lined with bookshelves filled with business strategy books, and the minimalist design gave off an air of serious professionalism. He didn't offer pleasantries. Instead, he got straight to the point. We're restructuring our core business model. It's a big move and it's going to shake things up, Andrew said. His voice steady but filled with purpose. I want you to lead the charge. Jessica blinked, processing the words. Led. This was not what she expected. She had come in hoping to prove herself, But now she was being trusted with the responsibility of heading a major initiative for the company. She could feel the weight of the task ahead of her, but it wasn't one that intimidated her. It sparked something within her, something she hadn't felt in a long time: determination. Andrew's eyes never wavered. "I trust you," he continued. "No games, no office politics. Just get it done. And I expect results." It was a challenge. A challenge that pushed her beyond the boundaries of what she thought she could do. But for the first time in years, Jessica felt like someone truly believed in her abilities. Not because of her past, but because of what she could accomplish now. It wasn't about her history or the mistakes she'd made. It was about what she was capable of in the present. Walking back to her desk, Jessica couldn't help but smile. This was it. This was real respect. It wasn't about false flattery or backhanded compliments. It was about trust and responsibility, something she hadn't experienced in years. She didn't need to prove herself through games or manipulation. All she needed to do was deliver, and that was exactly what she planned to do. As the days passed, Jessica threw herself into the project. She met with the team, formulated strategies, and began laying the groundwork for the restructuring. The work was intense, but it didn't feel like a burden. Each challenge felt like a stepping stone toward the success she had always dreamed of. The respect she had earned from Andrew, from her colleagues, fueled her drive. She wasn't just doing this for them. She was doing this for herself. For the first time in a long while, Jessica felt proud of the person she was becoming. The fresh start she had been given was more than just a new job. It was a chance to rebuild, to show the world, and more importantly herself, that she could rise above it all. With every decision she made, every problem she solved, she was building something that would not only change the company's future but also her own. This was her new beginning, and she was determined to make it count. Days turned into weeks, and as Jessica settled into her new role at Bennett & Associates, she received a steady stream of updates from her old colleagues at the company she had left behind. At first, it was just a trickle, a few casual messages here and there, but soon the updates became harder to ignore. Emily, her former colleague, was drowning in the weight of her new responsibilities. The leadership team had been shaken by Jessica's sudden departure, and without her steady guidance, cracks began to appear. Emily wasn't prepared to take on the role Jessica had left behind, and it was showing. Her confidence wavered, and clients were beginning to notice. "Clients are asking for you," one message from an old friend read. "They're not happy with the changes, and they're looking for someone they can trust. They keep mentioning you." The words hit Jessica hard. She hadn't intended to leave her old company in turmoil. She had done what she thought was best for herself, but now the aftermath was unfolding before her eyes. She could almost feel the weight of the decisions being made in the office she had once called home. It wasn't long before the updates became more frequent, more urgent. The complaints were mounting. Clients were unhappy, feeling neglected, and worse, some were beginning to question the leadership's ability to deliver the results they had promised. It was a far cry from the polished facade the company had once presented to the world. And then came the bombshell. Major clients, the kind of accounts that had once made her old company a force to be reckoned with, began reaching out to Jessica directly. It started with a phone call here, an email there, but it didn't take long for her to realize what was happening. They wanted to move their accounts to her new company. Jessica couldn't believe it. These were the same clients who had once been loyal to the company she had worked for, the ones who had trusted the leadership she had walked away from. Now they were coming to her, not because she had stolen them, but because they trusted her. "I need someone who can actually get things done," one client said over the phone. "We've heard about the changes at your old company, and honestly, we don't trust the new leadership. We've always had a great experience working with you, and we want to move our business to your team." It wasn't just one client. There were several. Slowly, one by one, they began to follow her, reaching out for reassurance that she would deliver what they had been promised, but failed to receive. Jessica wasn't the type to poach clients, but it became clear that they weren't leaving her behind. They were choosing to move their business to her because they knew she could deliver on her promises. It was the kind of trust that couldn't be faked, the kind that had been built over years of hard work and dedication. Jessica reflected on the calls, the messages, and the quiet storm that had been brewing behind the scenes. She had never expected this. She had left her old company for a fresh start, for the chance to prove her worth. But now, it felt as though she was watching the old empire crumble from the outside. The leadership team was falling apart without her steady hand guiding them. The cracks in the foundation had been there all along, but now they were starting to widen. She didn't feel triumphant, though. There was no sense of gloating, no smug satisfaction in seeing her former company unravel. What she felt was a quiet realization. Trust was the currency that mattered in business. She hadn't stolen anyone away. They had chosen to follow her because of the respect she had earned, because of the results she had delivered time and time again. It was a humbling experience, one that made her realize how much of her success had come from the relationships she had built, not the titles or the power she had once held. As the days passed, more clients continued to reach out, and Jessica's role at Bennett & Associates grew even more crucial. The old empire was collapsing, but for Jessica, this was just the beginning of something far greater. She had already built the trust of her clients, and with it, the foundation for a new kind of success, one that was grounded in honesty, hard work, and most of all, integrity. The world of business had changed for her, and now she was ready to change it for others. The email came through on a Wednesday afternoon, its subject line blunt and direct: meeting request. Jessica stared at it for a moment before clicking it open. The message was from Mr. Collins, the man who had once held all the power in her life, the man who had fired her without a second thought, the man who had never seen her as anything more than a cog in his corporate machine. Now he was reaching out. He wanted a meeting. "I would like to discuss the possibility of you rejoining the company," the email read. "We are in a difficult position, and I believe your skills could be valuable. Let me know when you're available." For a moment, Jessica felt a wave of satisfaction. She had worked hard to get where she was, to build something new, and now Mr. Collins, who had never appreciated her, was coming to her for help. It was almost laughable, but she knew what she had to do. There would be no negotiations. She wouldn't return to the company, no matter what he offered. This meeting wasn't about discussing a new role or a new opportunity. It was about watching him squirm. Jessica responded quickly, her reply short and to the point. "I can meet you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Let's make it clear. I'm not interested in negotiating. I'm coming to watch you try to fix what you broke." The next day, she walked into the sleek, polished conference room, a place that once felt like home but now felt like a cage. Mr. Collins was already there, his usual suit and tie looking stiff, his face slightly more worn than she remembered. The air between them felt heavy, charged with a tension that only years of rivalry could produce. Without wasting any time, Mr. Collins launched into his pitch. He tried to sound confident, but Jessica could tell he was struggling to maintain composure. He talked about the company's decline, the internal chaos, and the fact that clients were jumping ship. His words were rehearsed, his tone desperate. "Jessica," he said, his voice strained, "I know I made mistakes, but you're the only one who can help us now. We need your expertise. I'm offering you a senior position, anything you want. I'll give you complete control over the restructuring. You'll be in charge of everything." She sat back in her chair, her expression calm, unflinching. She let him talk, let him beg, let him offer her everything she had once dreamed of. But inside, all she felt was a cold sense of finality. This was too little, too late. Finally, when he finished, Jessica took a deep breath, leaned forward, and locked eyes with him. She could see the hope in his eyes, the desperation. He thought he could fix everything with one offer. He thought he could make everything right again. But Jessica knew better. She had moved past him, past the company, and past the games they had all played. Her life now was about respect, about doing things on her terms. And Mr. Collins had never understood that. He had never understood what it took to earn trust. She straightened her posture, her voice steady as she spoke the words she had been holding in. "You should take notes, Mr. Collins. Maybe next time, You'll learn to value the people who actually make your company run." The words hung in the air like a challenge. For a moment, Mr. Collins didn't know how to respond. He had nothing left to say. The truth was, his company had fallen apart because he had never truly valued the people who made it thrive. People like Jessica. And now it was too late. Without another word, Jessica stood up from the table, her heels clicking on the floor as she turned and walked toward the door. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. There was nothing left for her there. As she stepped out into the bright afternoon sunlight, Jessica felt a sense of freedom wash over her. She had taken back control of her life, and now the world was hers for the taking. There was no more looking back, no more regrets. She had made her peace with the past, and she was ready for whatever the future held. Weeks later, Jessica received the final update. It came in the form of a simple message from one of her old colleagues. Mr. Collins had been fired. The company had finally collapsed under the weight of his poor decisions, and the board had had enough. As she read the message, Jessica smiled. She wasn't replaceable. He was. And that, my friends, is the story of how Jessica walked away. Not in defeat, but in victory. Sometimes life will show you exactly who values you, and who only pretends to. The lesson here: never let anyone make you feel replaceable. Your worth isn't defined by how others treat you. It's defined by how you choose to rise after they've tried to tear you down. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this story. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's the biggest lesson you've learned from Jessica's journey? Did this story remind you of something you've experienced yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next powerful story coming your way. Until next time, stay strong, know your worth, and never settle.